Evil Dead the game is a 4 versus 1 horror action multiplayer game released on May 13th of 2022. As a live service entry in the franchise, the game is bound to attract Evil Dead fans, as well as release free and paid DLC over time. I'm a big fan of Evil Dead, and I was really looking forward to this title. So on today's video, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and feelings on Evil Dead the game.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another carrotscraps video, and by another, I mean the 103rd. Now with everything going on in my new house, like my job locking me in my bunker, and information informants throwing me notes, I kind of forgot that I thought this place might be haunted. And by thought, I mean that I can now, within a great degree of certainty, confirm that this place is haunted.
Dice.
You see? I've been hearing voices like crazy recently, and I'm not making those sounds, right? Carrot Slurps isn't making those sounds, so it must be ghosts. So before we jump into the video, I just wanted to say, if you hear any whispering, just ignore that. That's not bad editing on my part. That's ghosts and specters, I guess, just wandering around the house. Yeah, so with that important context out of the way, let's talk about Evil Dead the game. And let me explain first what this game is like for those of you who haven't played it yet.
So what is Evil Dead the game? Well, it's a live service multiplayer horror game where a team of 4 players must survive against one demon player. The 4 versus 1 horror genre has become somewhat popular recently because of games like Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th. However, in my opinion, Evil Dead has done something interesting with that formula and added a little twist. What Evil Dead did that makes it distinct is that playing as a survivor involves way more action and self-defense than it does in other games. In most asymmetrical horror games, you're running from an antagonist and trying your best to hide from the killer. However, in Evil Dead the game, players can collect weapons to kill and combat the creatures that are after them. Now typically, an online match of Evil Dead the game goes something like this. 4 players spawn somewhere on one of 2 fairly large maps. Once these players have spawned, their goal is to collect items such as weapons, upgrade modules, and status items that help you heal or add an additional shield. These items can be used to help protect players while they pursue their main goal. The main goal being to search for 3 pieces of a map scattered across the field. After gaining all 3 map pieces, players must obtain the Kandarian dagger, in addition to the last pages of the Necronomicon. And you do this by maintaining a small area and defending it from enemies for a short period of time. Once that's completed, players will be directed to approach the Dark Ones, who are on the field at all times but can only be attacked once you have the Kandarian dagger and the pages. And this interaction is somewhat of a boss battle that you win by using the Kandarian dagger to destroy them, while of course dodging hordes of enemies that the demon player is throwing at you. The final hurdle a player must accomplish in order to have a chance at winning a round against the demon player is to defend the Necronomicon from oncoming hordes of enemies, similar to when you were collecting the pages and the Kandarian dagger. There are a lot of steps there, but if players can accomplish all of that in one session, they'll win the round. Now, the 4 survivors can play as multiple characters that belong to different categories. Categories such as leader, hunter, and support, along with others. As mentioned earlier, these characters can carry weapons and collect other items. The demon player, on the other hand, has a very different collection of objectives and a very different gameplay style. The demon player has 3 characters to choose from so far. Their goal is to either kill all 4 players or prevent them from accomplishing their goal within the allotted time. Now, accomplishing these goals for the demon player is approached very differently since their gameplay isn't like the gameplay of the survivors. When playing as the demon, you will have a first-person perspective, and you'll fly across the map collecting orbs that give you power to attack survivors. The energy collected from these orbs can be spent in various different ways to aid you as the demon player. One of the most common uses is by raising deadite enemies that come in 3 different difficulties. Most deadite enemies are fodder, which can be difficult to handle in groups, but also relatively easy to take down on their own. A mid-difficulty enemy is also available to this player, and finally, a demon player can raise a boss enemy, which is much more difficult to defeat. This energy can also be spent to possess environmental things, such as cars and trees. Demon players can also possess survivors if they're scared enough, or they can possess deadites to have a more direct control over how they affect the game. In essence, playing as the demon allows for somewhat of a dungeon master experience. Players who take the role as a demon get a drastically different style of gameplay than survivors. When it comes to replayability, each of the many survivor characters and the 3 demonic characters have a skill tree that can be progressed through. By playing as these characters and earning experience points, you can raise their level and earn new abilities. Another interesting mechanic in the game is that survivor characters and demonic characters both have a temporary leveling up system. So at the start of every new game, players have a series of stats that start at 0 that can be upgraded by finding items in the world. And that's the general idea of Evil Dead the game and how a multiplayer match works. While Evil Dead the game is primarily focused on its online multiplayer sessions, it also features a short collection of single-player missions. These single-player missions include 6 chapters that reference the Evil Dead mythology, and in some cases unlock characters or audio logs that expand the lore of the game.
Now that I've kind of given you a window into what playing Evil Dead the game is like, I'd like to talk about my feelings on the... I feel like most of the time I know what they're saying. Like, it's like, oh, get out of the house. But every now and again, they'll say something like weird that I just don't know, like, what's going on. Like, I don't want to be rude to this ghost, but I do wish that they would enunciate just like a little bit more. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what that means.
I'll be honest, so when I first started playing Evil Dead the game, I started by playing these single-player missions. Now, I saw a number of people who didn't have a problem with these missions, but I also saw a number of people who agreed with my opinion, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. I don't think that these single-player missions are a great first impression for the game. I think the first mission was incredibly difficult and incredibly frustrating because of that difficulty. And even worse than that, the gameplay presented in that mission is very different than the gameplay that I would experience online, which is debatably the main focus of the game. The majority of your time with Evil Dead the game will be playing the online multiplayer. However, the first single-player mission presents a steep difficulty that isn't reflected in the majority of the game, so not only is it frustrating, it doesn't represent what the game is truly about. I think the second and third missions are a lot of fun, and I think they all feature some pretty cool references for fans of the franchise. Not to mention, it is really cool that they switch up the gameplay between each mission. I'm happy this single-player campaign is a part of the game, even if it is a little bit difficult sometimes and fairly brief. I just want more players to know that this isn't the best introduction to the game. I think if you play a couple of multiplayer matches first, you'll appreciate the single-player campaign way more, because I really do think that the single-player experience is really fun when played with the right context. Anyway, let's talk about the multiplayer. As for what I consider to be the true game itself, I had such a blast playing Evil Dead the game. I was so relieved after being frustrated with the single player and playing the game online to find that I actually really loved it. In fact, I'm willing to go so far as to say that it might be one of my favorite horror games, or at the very least my favorite multiplayer horror game. It's really simple. I think taking the core concept of the 4 versus 1 horror gameplay and flipping that on its head where you can take a more active role against your attackers really makes the game stand out. It really is unique compared to its predecessors, and more importantly, this chance taken on a different gameplay style is a lot of fun. Where you spawn and how large the map is really allows each game to feel somewhat unique. Evil Dead the game does a really good job of creating opportunities for interesting moments. For example, like needing to resurrect a friend, but being attacked by a skeleton, and your ally killing that enemy by driving into them with a car, only for that demon to possess the car shortly after. I feel like there's a lot that can happen in each round, and that unpredictability really adds to the fun and horror of the game. The way you interact with the world and the types of attacks that you have make players feel like they have a lot of options when it comes to protecting themselves. While melee attacks aren't the most sophisticated in the world, having it as an option in addition to the fairly satisfying gunplay is greatly appreciated. In addition, the fear system in the game, which is a mechanic that players must manage as they attempt to accomplish their goals, works really well as a motivator. Essentially, the way it works is that the longer a player is in the dark or by themselves, the higher their fear meter will get. And if your fear meter is too high, then the demon player can possess you and attack your friends. I think some games that have similar mechanics sometimes end up feeling like a chore, and they get in the way of prioritizing fun. However, I think the fear mechanic in the game is a great responsibility to juggle in addition to looking after your health. It incentivizes you to stick with your team, but also gives you options to decrease your fear in various ways. In addition, the consequences of not monitoring your fear actually make you scared as a player because it's up to the demon whether they'll take advantage of that fear or leave you alone. And that lingering choice can be quite anxiety-inducing. Now, when I praise this game as a horror game, it's because I genuinely am kind of on edge when I'm playing. I really like playing this game in the dark, and it's because it really startles me and creeps me out. One of the best aspects of the game aiding in its horror experience is the sound design. I genuinely genuinely think that the soundscape of the world is really creepy. So again, when I'm sitting in the dark with just my TV illuminating me, I start to feel the sounds of this world creeping into my real life, praying desperately that a deadite doesn't jump out of the bushes to dropkick me, or that the demon player doesn't do a jump scare on me. Now, the environments of Evil Dead the game are some of the coolest things about it. They stand out on their own as well-made immersive backdrops, but they also double as really cool references if you're a fan of the franchise. There are a number of locations that I basically expected to be in the game, but I didn't expect how excited I got when I discovered it randomly. It's kinda cool that you can just kind of wander into an iconic location. But in general, divorced from the franchise, I love the way the game looks. In real life, I genuinely find the woods very scary, and I really love things that I'm afraid of, so I absolutely love that most of the game takes place in the woods. And not just that, it's a really gorgeous rendering of a spooky forest. To me, the setting is perfect, and it's part of the reason why I enjoy returning to the game so much, because I'm really immersed in this well-rendered location that's really personally scary to me. But keep in mind, we will be getting more maps in the future in different locations. Another added quality to the game for me, and I assume many other players, is that it's part of the Evil Dead franchise, and there are a number of fun references and iconography to admire. I've always been a fan of Evil Dead, and to prepare for the game, I rewatched the movies and watched the Evil Dead TV show Ash vs. the Evil Dead for the first time. First of all, Ash vs. the Evil Dead was incredible, but the game does an absolutely outstanding job of incorporating references and lore from all pieces of Evil Dead media, and finding those references are really fun for fans, I think. The music is also really fantastic in this game. Though I wish there were more tracks to speak of, the ones that do exist are really catchy and capture the mood perfectly, especially the slow build of that first song that welcomes you to the title screen. When I first popped in the game and I heard that song, I was so hyped. And anytime I start up the game again, that song gets me really excited. I mean, I find myself humming the melodies from the game's soundtrack pretty often, even when I'm not playing. Another thing that I love about Evil Dead the game is that the enemy takedowns are brutal and really fun to watch. They're super creative, and you have a number of them depending on what weapons you use. And seeing these brutal, violent takedowns are a really important part of an over-the-top franchise like Evil Dead. Now, something else about the game is that I really wish there were more skins. Let me be clear, this is not me asking for microtransactions. I'm just saying that some characters already have multiple skins, and it's kind of a bummer that some of my favorite characters like Kelly and Amanda don't have more skins for you to choose from. Although, again, I'm not necessarily asking for microtransactions. I can feel the Kandarian demons listening to me and wanting to add them. So one of my favorite things about the game is how active you can be as a survivor, especially because in other horror-based... Like, I hear what she's saying about, like, the house, right? Like, I get that. But, like, what's the other thing? She's saying something else.
Dice.
Yeah, like, what? There's, like, something else, right? Like, she's saying, like, some other, like... Weapons can be collected throughout the world, and they're split into multiple types of rarities similar to games like Fortnite. Like I mentioned earlier, I think ranged weapons are really satisfying in terms of variety, but also the way that they feel. It's really satisfying to kill deadites in the game, and to strategize between guns that can fire more quickly, and weapons that can do more damage. When it comes to characters and their different roles, I've primarily played as hunters in the game, mostly because Kelly and Amanda are my two favorite characters from Ash vs. the Evil Dead, but also because I really enjoy their gameplay. I gave some of the other characters a try before I hopped into this review, and they are still satisfying. I just really enjoy supporting my team from afar with a ranged weapon. I think there's enough ammo in the world for it to be a viable option, but still for you to have to strategize carefully as to not waste it. Survivors also have a special ability that I think really make the game interesting. For example, one of my favorite characters, Amanda, has an ability where she can temporarily have unlimited ammo, and that is just so tremendously handy sometimes when things are getting a little bit too crazy. But thankfully it doesn't last too long, so it doesn't feel like too much of a crutch. I'll be honest, most of the time I like playing as a survivor in the game, and I feel like that's my favorite style of gameplay in Evil Dead the game. However, to prepare for this review, I tried to play as the Kandarian demon player more than I normally did, and I gotta say, I had a lot of fun. You know, at first, I felt like the game was more difficult for survivors, but after playing the demon more, it really is difficult to master that style of gameplay as well. So if you're playing really well as a demon, it's gonna be difficult to survive. I gotta be honest, it's difficult mastering playing as the demon, but it's definitely still fun. It's It's a really cool idea and a well-designed form of gameplay. It also complements the survivor gameplay really well. I like how different it is, so if you feel like playing as the survivor has become a little bit repetitive, you can play drastically differently as the demon. I also really love the idea of playing in the first person through the woods. That's a really cool piece of fan service to the Evil Dead franchise that I never knew I wanted and didn't expect from the game. It's just such a cool idea to be that first-person danger thing that Sam Raimi presented in those original films. Even though I still have a lot to learn in terms of becoming a better demon player, I definitely like the challenge and freedom I get from playing as that type of character. There's a really fun strategy to learn when it comes to mastering this type of gameplay, and you have a lot of cool tools at your disposal. But after playing as the Kandarian demon for longer, it's become very clear to me that there's actually a pretty good balance between these two types of gameplay, the demon player and the survivor player. Both are fairly difficult, but I feel like they're pretty well balanced now, and you just need to get good at whatever gameplay you choose, and you might be able to overcome that challenge. Trying to play as both demon and survivor instead of just as survivor has really illustrated how balanced these two types of gameplay really are to me. Knowing that fact also encourages me to get better at the game, which I think is pretty cool. Plus, that difficulty adds to the survivor horror element. I really feel like this game is trying to kill me, or that these survivors need to die as soon as possible. Now, as I mentioned, I mostly play as the hunter characters Kelly and Amanda, and so that class of character is my favorite to play as. But I wanted to try out the other character types for this review. Now, I thought I was bad at the game when playing as a hunter character that I was familiar with, but when I started experimenting with other types of characters like support, I would lose rounds so quickly. Again, it really does give you a respect for the game. What little experience I do have with playing this game really does give me a leg up, as opposed to playing a character that I have no experience with. In addition, this difficulty breeds a fierce determination to prove the game wrong and rise above that difficulty. Now, maybe I could ask the game to be just a little more forgiving, but at the same time, I genuinely feel for the most part that the skill required to overcome these challenges is attainable if I try hard enough. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that you really do need to function as a team. It really is insane how quickly you can die and game over if your team isn't working together. Like, I've had insanely fast matches.
Now, I absolutely love The Evil Dead the game, in case it wasn't obvious, but I still have criticisms and feedback that I'd like to give it. Constructive, of course. You see, the reason why... I still don't know what you're saying. Maybe I can try like a lesson plan or something, like to teach them how to speak better, because I have no idea. I get, you know, the house stuff. I hear that loud and clear. I hear that. Now, while I absolutely love the game, I do have my criticisms. One of my biggest criticisms of the online play is that I do feel that map pieces could be easier to locate. Some players have told me that they find them with no problem, and I'll admit that sometimes I'm able to find them fairly quickly. Now, I admit maybe I just need to get good, right? But at the moment, it feels as if many of my games are spent searching a large region with very little indicator on where these map pieces could be. I think a great way to fix this could be adding an item that players can obtain from a chest that leads them to one map piece. Another criticism I have is that while I love the design of the world, the terrain can be a little bit difficult to traverse sometimes. The smallest ledges can be so annoying because you can't scale them even though it looks like you could. I wish there was a way to climb over these little areas, because other than that, the world is really beautiful. But when I'm prevented from moving forward by a rock that's no bigger than my ankle, that can be a little frustrating sometimes. Now, I love that there are additional traversal options in the game. Having a car at your disposal is really great, but car driving physics are a little like horse riding physics from Oblivion, a game that came out like, what, 15 years ago? At the end of the day, most of the time, the cars control very well, or at least well enough to get out of a sticky situation or to where you need to be. Your car might flail around momentarily, but it's just funny and nothing too serious. Now, I do have a weird criticism about animation time. Sometimes the animation to perform a certain task just takes way too long in my opinion, and it causes critical mistakes in your gameplay. Like when you're trying to resurrect a friend, the timer finishes before your animation does, and as a result, you don't technically finish the task. And so the timer will finish to resurrect and you'll get hit by an enemy, but because you didn't finish that animation, the enemy is still dead. It's happened too many times to count, and that can be so frustrating. And I hope that it's something that the developers think
think about adjusting in the future. Now, something I really don't appreciate about the game is that it's always online. Especially since they included a single-player collection of missions, I find it really odd that you have to be online to play the game. It's just a really odd choice that I don't necessarily agree with. Like, obviously I understand it for multiplayer, but I just think it's weird for single-player and even just being in the menu if you're not connected to the internet. It would be really nice to play in the multiplayer gameplay style with a collection of CPUs, whereas at the moment you have to be online to play most of these gameplay modes. So I hope that's something that they consider adding in the future. Another criticism that I have has really very little to do with the game itself and more to do with the community that's playing it. All I have to say is that this is clearly one of those games where people take it too seriously. This is one of the first games in a while that I've played where people on mic are almost always either frustrated with their team or telling them what to do. Which, like, I understand if you're competitive, that's totally fine, and definitely there are some players online who can be frustrating, right? But at the end of the day, it's just a game, and I'm just not the biggest fan of hearing people micromanage what other players do. And this has happened to me on multiple occasions so far. And every time someone gets a little bit too bossy with someone on my team, I have to strongly fight the urge to just be disruptive. Every time I'm like, I'm just gonna unload my entire gun and run around and flail. But again, that's just something I've personally noticed, and it really has nothing to do with the game itself. Something I will say is that while matchmaking was really strong at launch, a couple of months later, I have a harder time finding a team than I did before. Now, I don't know why that is, whether it's not a lot of people playing or it's something with the servers, but either way, it wouldn't hurt to get more people playing the game. So hey, if you're interested, make sure to play it, because I think a lot of people are looking for teams right now. In the end, I really love Evil Dead the game. Even with my criticisms, I think the best thing about Evil Dead the game is that it prioritizes fun, which to me, as I've said before, is one of the most important things about a video game. And though Evil Dead the game is kind of a small package and rounds are kind of short, the gameplay loop is incredibly fun. Not only that, but it participates in a topical gameplay genre, but its contribution to that genre is very unique, and I think that stands out amongst the rest. Now, for people who are on the fence about getting Evil Dead the game, I'll say this: if the fun, unique gameplay and fan service isn't enough for you, the game is priced perfectly at just $40. The majority of my gameplay was on PlayStation 5, and in a world where most modern PlayStation 5 games are $70, I can't tell you how much I appreciated the $40 price tag. It really does add a huge amount of value to the game for me. So if you're an Evil Dead fan, I think this game is a must, and if you're a fan of horror games, and especially this genre, I think you're missing out if you don't check out Evil Dead the game. I really enjoy it and find it incredibly addictive. I can't tell you how many times I find myself wanting to play this game, so if you're able to, I highly recommend checking out Evil Dead the game.
Dice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Dice.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that part. But I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, you know. I'm down to talk more, you know. Always happy to have you, you know, throw your 2 cents in, even if I don't know exactly what you're saying, you know what I mean? Ghosts, you know. What are you going to do? Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If for some reason you enjoyed this strange video, don't forget to like it and to subscribe to my channel for more. As regular viewers know, I make a variety of content on my channel, and I'm always going to make the videos that I want to make. But if you see something you enjoy, make sure to let me know, and I'll try to prioritize that kind of content in the future. If you want to watch me play video games live, like Evil Dead and other games like Marvel's Avengers, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/carrotscraps. And all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, are at carrotscraps as well. So I want to thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. This is getting a little annoying. You see what I mean? Like, it's like I gotta talk over myself just to... I can't hear myself think. Please stop. I can't hear myself think.